Twin Hooks Family Farm. So we are in the meat bird production barn checking on these Cornish Rock Cross. They're 30 days old. So let's take a look at what's going on around the pen. Actually, they were all resting under their heat lamps, and their goal was to stay warm for sure. So temperature is about 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not the temperature preference of these birds at all, ever. When we first get them as hatchlings, just hatched, the temperature they want is about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And even at this age, 30 days, little over 4 weeks, they still would really like it to be about 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. So, we're dealing with our barn being pretty much dependent on outdoor temperature for ambient conditions. If we don't introduce any like artificial heat or artificial cooling or enhanced air movement. So that's why we have all the heat lamps in. But at 32 degrees, what that means is they're going to want to stay where we have heat, okay? And they're going to be not wanting to be where there isn't heat. So basically, these birds were all under the heat lamps, and we ask them to get up and move around and exercise several times a day if they're not taking initiative to do that on their own. And when they're concentrating in one portion of the pen and they're prioritizing warmth, we know that they're not taking initiative on their own to get up and exercise. So we're going to be even more vigilant at that point about making sure they do that. But when we asked them to all move, most of them came out here to the feeders and waters, and they'll eat and drink, manure, play, scratch around, and then they'll make their way back. All of them will be back here, and they'll spread out and settle down under these heat lamps. Now, for a while we had like feeders down the middle of the heat lamp rows and feeders and waters, positioned close to the outside of the heat like those are, but the birds have grown, so they need more of that space. And so now the way it is, that one was getting up to go to water. Now the way it is, they'll spread out where we've got this blanket of warmth, and then actually our temperatures are supposed to warm up. So, but these birds are in what we call the growing phase. So they're set now to finish, meaning they're really primed with their growth in their skeletal structure and their development of their internal organs and their immune system and their thermoregulation. Like all that stuff has been taken care of in the starting and growing phases by the bird's body, and they've been feathering in. Now their energy can mainly be converted from feed to meat, and their energy can go into them finishing as successful meat birds. So distributing the meat to the chicken breast and the drumsticks and the thighs. So that's what we're going to see. They've got 2 weeks of production left. They actually go to processor on day 43. So they've got about 2 weeks left, and that's what we're going to see in the last 2 weeks. We want them to continue with their heavy appetite, and we want them to continue getting adequate rest to support that growth. But we also need to emphasize keeping their legs strong, because they're going to grow so much so fast. We don't want their legs to give out, and that's why we insist that they get up and move. So one thing interesting that we see here and that you need to be aware of, if you're going to raise meat birds and you've got to fight any kind of less than ideal ambient conditions, just like this, we can set up pretty good artificial ambient conditions that are to their liking, but we have to be aware that they're gonna prioritize ambient comfort, okay? And they're probably gonna prioritize ambient comfort over getting up to go to food and getting up to go to water. So like even in this pen, the way we have the food and water distributed, what we end up seeing is when it's gotten cold and they want to concentrate under the heat lamps, all those feeders right beside the heat and the water right beside the warmth, those are all going to empty first. And all these other feeders and waters, like out here, they're not going to empty as fast. And even just this feed tray is a great example. Down here on this end, the feed tray is basically full. We fill it to the top when we fill it. Down here on this end is basically empty, okay? So this end is so much closer to the warmth. When they've wanted to eat while it's been cold, they were willing to leave the heat lamps and go this far. But they weren't willing to leave the heat lamps and go this far unless we made them, okay? Same with water. You know, they're here now because we made birds get up. But these two waters were not empty, okay? That water was empty. So they perceived that water to be close enough to the heat source and the warmth that they were willing to go to it. But the other waters, they're like, well, we're not as willing to go to those waters, okay? So actually, if it were going to stay cold, we would probably move a couple waters right here, you know, and we would try to bring some feeders and waters closer in here. But it, like I said, it is supposed to warm up back in the 50s. So we're going to help them manage through today, and then they should have some warmer temperatures again, at least for a week, and then we'll have to reassess that. It looks like the last week of their production, we are going to have nights in the 20s. So they'll be bigger, and they'll still want to be about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So we may at that point have to put more heat lamps in here and, you know, position the feeders and waters accordingly too. But that's what's going on here. This water, we had let them empty it. And with it being the closest one to the heat lamps, they chose to empty it. So so we've refilled it. So they're getting their fill of water there. But, you know, really, I mean, they can go to that one. They can go to that one. And these birds are out here eating, and they're content with that, you know. We've got two at this water, and they're content with that. So, but they prize and prioritize ambient comfort. So, as I said, like, this is not ideal conditions, you know, if we're going to have to work with weather that's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. But when you're a small operation and you've got to spread, you know, your production out through the calendar year, sometimes we do have to fight less than ideal conditions. And let me tell you, we try to plan it, you know, we try to plan flocks when we think we're likely to get reasonable weather to start grow and finish them in, but you never can predict it, because honest to goodness, we've had flocks that experienced chill stress in July, and we've had flocks that experienced heat stress in November. So you just never know. You just never know, but you do your best. But that's what we're up against right now. They want to be warm, and it's 32 degrees outside. So they're gonna, you know, they're gonna prioritize where we put the warmth. And if we see that we're gonna have to work against extended cold, then we'll have to probably add some more heat. But at this point, we're just looking at it warming up here. So that'll help them tremendously, because even once it warms up to like 50, they're going to be a lot more comfortable. And we'll be able to open doors on the building and let some indirect sun in. And so it's good to see activity. It's good to see appetite. So even with fighting the weather, we see a lot of great indicators in this pen, in this flock, that the birds are coping with this, and we're going to be okay on the outcome here. So that's the main thing. But if they were 3 weeks old or younger, we wouldn't be able to tolerate the cold snap. We would have to give them more heat. But with the age that they're at, and with it not being extended time that we're going to see cold, we're able to manage through this. But hey, it's something that any farmer or any livestock producer, or anytime you're raising livestock for production for household consumption, you know, you're always going to fight imperfect conditions, unless money is no object and you can build heated buildings. But we're not at that point yet, so we're doing what we can with what we have.